Welcome to Good Horses, Stories of the American Quarter Horse. I'm Jim Jennings.
And I'm Bobby Loran. We're excited to bring you the stories of the horses that have made a lasting impact on some of the most legendary figures in the quarter horse industry. Each episode, we'll hear about the horses that challenged them, taught them, and left a special mark on their lives.
From remarkable lessons to unforgettable rides, these are the stories that celebrate the heart, soul, and horsepower of the American quarter horse.
This podcast is brought to you by the American Quarter Horse Association. Let's get started.
Today we're in Overbrook, Oklahoma at the home of Bobby Lewis. Bobby has been in the American quarter horse industry for a long time. He's an AQHA professional horseman. He has shown over 30 AQHA world champions, and he's bred horses that have won over $3.3 million. Bobby, welcome to Good Horses.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Nice for you guys to come.
We want to talk about good horses, but in the beginning, tell me how you got into this industry and where you started, where you came from.
Well, of course, I was raised like in Muleshoe, Texas. My dad had horses and several of them trained horses and at a dairy farm. It was just a working program, so to speak. And I've always loved to rope and rope forever. And fortunately, he was raised a lot of nice horses, and that's what kind of I got started riding those, that we'd raised. And then we, of course, when I was like in a freshman in high school, we moved to San Juan, New Mexico, where he bought a training track up there. And he liked racehorses, was his passion. And of course, prior to that, I jockeyed a lot, rode a lot of match races.
Okay.
And it was very enlightening. It was good. It was a lot of fun. And we ran a lot of match races in Lubbock and all over the country. And they used to run the Oklahoma Futurity in Enid, Oklahoma, 100 years ago. Okay, and I was I was 14, that's how old I was, and my mother put me on the train, and I rode to Enid, Oklahoma, up there to ride a mare we had up there in that Oklahoma Futurity. And we get up there, and Daddy had talked to the stewards and said I could do it. And then he got up there, and they said, "You can't do it. He's not old enough." So I didn't get to ride her in the Futurity and everything. But a little mare that he raised, so Miss Connie Starr is her name. She was really a nice little mare. We got a stack of win pictures of her match races, and then it was very good. And but anyway, we then with all that kind of developed, and we moved to San Juan, and then Daddy trained horses there and racehorses. Mostly, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, of course, I roped the whole time. I started roping, built an arena there, and on that race plate, on that deal, and roped there all the time. And then kind of high school dealed a little bit and rode bulls some and for the all around and all that. Just like a lot of us did at that point in time. But it was a lot of fun. We got had an awesome childhood. It was good the whole way through. Yeah, it was real good. We had a lot of fun and always something to do. Always had a lot of horses to ride. And I'd come in from school and he'd have them lined up for a gate break, whatever. And sometimes I'd get up before I went to school and ride some. But it was good. Yeah. And then as we got older, and I didn't really crave the racetrack. You know what I mean? As far as that, and that's I've said numerous times that's probably what I should have pursued. But of course it's been good anyway. So yeah. But anyway, it's been good, and then went to Eastern New Mexico there on a roping rodeo scholarship and such, and then transferred to Mexico State and graduated from there, and just kind of been rolling along. Then when I got out of college, I moved to Clovis and started riding horses there, and rode horses, shot a lot of horses, and just whatever I could do to make a living, so to speak. Took care of a lot of cattle and such as that. Yeah.
So
all the time was still raising horses. Yeah, my dad. Yeah.
Okay. So you actually started training horses right out of college, or maybe before you got out of college?
I was actually I was in what you call it training, but I rode a lot of ponies and stuff when I was a kid. Yeah, you know what I mean? That's what we whatever there was, I was kind of involved in it. But anyway, I've been training quote horses for a long time since I was a kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's been good. Helped me along the way, and then we, like I said, when I got to Clovis and we started training training horses there, and like I say, took care of a lot of cattle on wheat and such that kind of stuff, shod horses, just whatever I could make a living, so to speak. And then we had some horses, and I got started showing. A good friend of mine, Jerry Kimsey, lived there at Belen. We used to be good friends, roped together some, and I showed some before that. I mean, like I showed like in the 4-H and that kind of stuff. Like the little mare that I mentioned a while ago, she was a little superstar. She was like grand champion at the state 4-H, deal and that kind of. I mean, she was a good little mare, and we got to run poles on her, and we did everything on her, along with match racing her. She was one of those kind, and so it's been blessed with nice horses all along for sure.
Do you remember her name?
Yeah, Miss Connie Starr. Yeah, she was by a horse called Carbus Dude. My dad raised her. He had raised that stallion, Carbus Dude. Now I have an Oklahoma Starbred mare. A big brown mare. Never forget her. Big tall mare, probably 16 hands. Big pretty mare. And she had that. Of course, that mare that we ran and did everything on. She was just a sweetheart, little real pencil neck, pretty. You'd love her. She's like 14.2, but she could really run, and she just whatever you wanted to do. She was a good one. Yeah. Yeah, so those basic good bloodlines, they go way back, for sure, yeah. So anyway, but my dad he had some nice horses to begin with, yeah.
So when did you really start training for other people then, taking horses in?
Well, of course, like I say, I did it, all along to a degree, but like as far as just being as a quote just a trainer, it was a little bit later on as far as, because like I said, I took care of a lot of cattle and rode a lot of my own horses. And then I started riding horses for, rode horses. I've always had horses for other people, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, like that, but not as far as and it kind of developed a little later on more so. And I started, I showing some horses for Jack Kyle. I was shoeing his horses actually. And I started showing some horses for him. And then he wanted me to go to some shows and help him and whatever. And then had a bay gelding that I wanted to show some, and his name was Mighty Burt. He was a horse called AAA horse called Mighty Burt. He was Daddy. In fact, Daddy set a couple of records with him at the racetrack at Raton, a couple of coat records and stud records and such. So,
right.
Yeah, it was kind of anyway, he was a AAA racehorse, and then. But just couldn't run fast enough to outrun the real good ones, And so anyway, I started roping on him, and he made an outstanding horse. Went to the Land of Enchantment circuit there at the Mexico State Fairgrounds. There, that used to be one of the big. I think at that time maybe was right behind the Congress as far as numbers of entries.
Yeah,
it was huge at that time.
Okay, yeah,
and was fortunate enough to won the head and heeling both. Actually, won the circuit in both. So yeah, it was. As a matter of fact, Sonny Jim Moore was showing Diamond Sparkle. That's how long ago it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He was showing her there, and of course Jack Kyle had a whole bunch of them there. Skipper Bar horses. Anyway,
right.
And it was a lot of fun, and I was very fortunate. And then I just kind of course I started showing some for Jack after I shot his horses for a couple of years, literally over there, and we. And I started showing a little bit more, and then kind of got going to more of them, and it kind of evolved from there. Then, like in what I guess maybe 82 or something, it's 100 years ago. But anyway, I met Carol Rose at Tulsa at the Sun Circuit, and she approached me about riding some horses for them, her and Matlock, and so that was a huge turning point in my quote training career. So to speak, because that's, I've got more involved in just showing and going to the shows and just training, just preparing the horses for that, and of course I'd rodeoed all along, all this time I'd been rodeoing. That was my biggest, and of course when I was rodeoing, jackpot, team roping and all, it was like, I was literally wondered why everybody wasn't doing it. You know what I mean? I mean, I craved it. It was a, you know, it was a good deal. Went to, you know, mostly just Panhandle, Texas Panhandle, and all the New Mexico shows when they had the New Mexico Association and had the NARC finals and all that. You know, years ago.
Yeah.
They had there in Denver, and I was fortunate enough to win that, the KF Open up there. But anyway, just, you know, but I was rodeoing a lot right along in there too, you know, all this time. So, you know, out of college, I rodeoed the whole time. So, yeah.
Okay. So after you started riding horses for Carol, now, did you stay in Clovis?
Yeah. Still, yeah. I kept my place there in Clovis. And matter of fact, I still own the place. I still own the home place there, which, why I don't know, but we still do anyway. So, but anyway, I stayed there and flew back and forth a lot and drove back and forth, and I had horses there, 4 roads, you know, had horses there, and I'd bring them back and we'd go to shows here. And then I started staying in Gainesville quite a bit. You know, I still had my place there in Clovis, and that's where, you know, my kids went to school there in Texaco. That's where they graduated from high school, both of them. Yeah, right there outside of Clovis. Yeah. Okay. And then we started showing in like in '83 or whatever. We was showing a lot.
Primarily for
Carol. Yeah.
Carol Matlock. So
yeah, for Carol Matlock. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in '83 and '84, and then we kind of rolled along, you know, from there, and then it was a really good. It was really a good. If you like showing horses, it was like showing roping horses. That was the place to be, because yeah, she had a lot of nice horses and like really good ones, you know. So, and I mean, the list is long. I've been so lucky to have been able to ride so many nice horses from literally childhood to up to now, you know. I've been very fortunate. Yeah. And she was very instrumental in my showing, because you know, she was raising good horses and she wanted them shown and promoting those stallions, and I was fortunate enough to get the gig.
Get to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I get to ride them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. What, did you continue showing for Carol for a long time and take other outside horses as well? Or?
Yeah. Well, when I first started showing for her, I had some outside horses at the time, and I'd show them some. But after I started riding horses for Carol and Matlock, basically I just rode mostly their horses and mine. I showed a lot of my horses, and that was kind of the, you know, with kind of our, you know, our arrangement, so to speak. And so it was good. But basically, I showed mostly Carol's, you know, and that was my primary objective. And then of course I was raising my own along, you know, the way, you know. So yeah, like that, you know, like the first world championship I won was on a horse of Jack Kyle's, you know, and when I showed him, that was the first one I won. And then I won the KF Open on a horse that we raised, Fast Playboy. And he was
at the World Show.
At the World Show, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he was a really, really a nice horse. He helped pay for a lot of stuff around my place for a long time. He was really a nice KF horse. I rode him at all the big rodeos, and I mean, he was the real deal.
And showed him both.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Now that horse that you were talking about, the first world champion, I think that was Barbaleo.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was him. Yeah, he was a little gray horse, and he was bionic. I mean, he was a tight, twisted Skipper W. Jack Kyle bred all the way. You know what I mean? He was the goods, you know, for that line. But he was a hard stopping. I mean, the first time I seen him, I remember, I was shoeing him over there, and Jack was he was riding, and the arena was just right there by the barn, and I'd shoe one and walk out and watch him ride, you know, there in the arena and wheel him around. And the first time I seen that little horse, I was going, "Gee, man, crazy!" But he had of course, that was back before personally that I had been around very many reiners, you know, the big, huge, long stops, and you know what I mean. Mostly my deal, I'd been around a few cutters and mostly roping horses and race horses, so to speak. So, and I'd seen some of it, but I hadn't, you know, wasn't much in it. But he had run that little horse down there, and he had slide 30 feet there in his arena, you know, and he didn't have it manicured like they do nowadays. Yeah, I'm telling you, it was a cowboy place, and which I just loved that guy, Jack Kyle. He was a wonderful man.
Yes,
anyway,
he was.
He and an excellent horseman, a real true horseman. But anyway, he had the horse would just drag his tail, and all those horses were. He had them all, just skidding along and was really good roping horses. I mean, really good ones. And he needed somebody to. And fortunately, he was. To me, get it. I'm not going to say how he'd say it, but he'd tell you, come on and get on this horse and help him. You need somebody to turn some steers for him or whatever. We would rope. And anyway, it was very, very good experience and taught me a lot and just on basic, details and things about showing one.
Showing one. Okay.
And so anyway, and he needed me shown there. And that was, so we went, showed him there, and when the head on him, and I was, of course, I was pretty blown away, to be honest with you. It was pretty cool. Yeah. And then come back a couple of years later and won it on my horse, the calf roping. So, yeah.
All right. Now, what was that horse again?
Fast Playboy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It was the first one that I showed for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was in the tie down then.
It was in the tie down that I won that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Won the heading on Jack's horse and won the tie down on my horse. Yeah. And then over the years, been fortunate enough to win a couple in all the head and heeling and calf roping. Oh, yeah.
Well, like I mentioned a while ago, 30 some odd world
yeah. Well,
so.
yeah. It's been good. It's been a good run for sure. Yeah.
Oh, on those, before we get into any more horses, 30-something world champions. Are all of those in the roping, Bobby? I know you showed some cow horses and.
Yeah, I've been reserve champion in the cutting and reserve champion in the cow horse multiple times, but I've never won it in the cow horse or the cutting. But I've been reserve champion a couple of times in both of them.
Okay.
Yeah. I've had I was reserve champion in the cutting on a little mare that I raised, Playboy mare. Yeah, and then. Another Playboy mare too, actually, and then the cow horse. Horse name is Skip Steel. No, not Skip. It's can't remember. Skip Bar was his name. A Palomino horse that showed for Carroll.
Okay.
And he was a world champion in the heading and the heeling, and reserve champion in the cow horse. He was a nice horse, I believe. So I believe she sold him to George Strait. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was really a nice Palomino horse. Yeah, but he was. Yeah, in fact, as a matter of fact, Jerry Kimsey won it that year, beat me by half a point in the cow horse. Of course, I give him heck about it all the time. Long in there, because we hauled together and he helped me. We drove together a lot, and I give him a lot of trouble about that deal. Anyway, but another horse called Timalina, and he was a good little horse too. Really a good little horse. He raised him. He was a horse called Goldalina, and he was a good little. In fact, he won the honor roll, I think, 2 or 3 years in a row in the cow horse.
Okay.
That little horse. So he was legit for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So, but most of the ones I've been fortunate enough to win was in the roping. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's kind of where that's where we focused more than anything. Yeah.
Right.
Like some of those horses I showed in the cow horse, we just we wasn't as intense on the cow horses as we was. I mean, I roped calves, head and heeled on them. And then we'd show them in the cow horse, and was fortunate enough, they was good enough horses, like that horse. He was just a good horse. You could just do whatever you wanted to. That was pretty broke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
It's just nice horses. Of course, I say that with some reservation because, I don't know how competitive they would be today, as specialized as it's gotten, I'm sure I would need to zone in a little bit more if it's just going to be, but it was all them. There was a lot of the main guys there, but it was good. Yeah, it was good. And fortunately, they was just good horses to ride. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bobby, I've got a list of some of the horses that you've shown, so I'm going to ask you about some of them. But I also want you, any that that you think of, because that's what we're going to do. We're just going to talk about the good horses.
Yeah,
so, we mentioned Barbaleo, and I think we mentioned Fast Playboy.
Yeah.
And then Reprise Bar.
Oh yeah, you got. I mean, of all the horses that I've ridden, you have to. Of course, he was. I don't know how to put it, the mainstay or so of my beginning, as far as really being really competitive at every show you went to or wherever you pulled. You could drag him out of the trailer, and I promise you, those guys that were there, they'd go, because he was hard to get around. He was just one of those kind. He was a show horse, and he was a good horse, and hardly ever did anything to beat you. He was always on your team, and he was a gorgeous horse. I mean, a pretty neck, pretty headed, and a big old butt, a Palomino horse. And just, I mean, if you just anybody walked up like the quarter horse, you had to love him, and he was, and that's the way he showed too. In the head and heeling, calf roping, cow horse, didn't matter, whatever it was, he was on your team. And, it's, I cannot say enough good about him, as far as, helping me as a trainer, as well as being just, the kind that it's a pleasure to show. Because in any event, I mean, I don't know, I'd have to look, but I think I won the world on him in, a couple of different deals, and he was a super horse one year. And
super horse 1984.
Yeah. He was a super horse, and like, I don't know, we won, like at the Sun Circuit, he was the high point horse of the show, won all, wherever they had all arounds, quote, so to speak. Well, he was hard to get around,
right.
But he was just a magnificent horse. Yeah, you just couldn't, he was out of a Daughter Blondie's dude, I believe. And, and he would, people talk about, well, their horses have changed and, they're better now and whatever. You ride in on Reprise Bar today, and he would kick some butt. I'm telling you, he was as good a horse as you wanted to swing your leg over, whether it be in 25 or 85, it doesn't matter. He was the goods.
Yeah.
He was that kind of horse. And fortunately, it's kind of, I get this a lot, and people ask me, what's the best horse you've ever ridden, or whatever, I mean, people ask me that, quite often now, honestly, or what's your favorite horse? And I really can't really say, which is absolute my favorite, because, it's whatever moment I'm talking about, or whatever that, whatever I think about at that moment. That's my, because I've had ridden so many good ones. But needless to say, of all the horses I've ridden, he's close to the top of the list, because he was just bionic, and he changed, it had a lot to do with my evolving into the show industry, and, being,
okay.
That's what you got to have.
Yeah.
You have to have those good ones,
Now, you showed him in the heading, heeling, and calf roping.
Calf roping, reining, cow horse.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah,
okay.
we showed him in a lot of stuff. Carol was, I believe she was reserve champion, maybe at the World Show one year in the cow horse. She wanted to show him, because she showed really good. She was she showed really good, in the reining and the cow horse. And so she showed him, and she got along. I mean, he was a goods. I mean, he was a nice horse. Yeah. Stop every time, just one of those kind. And I've got a stack of pictures of him in the calf roping pictures, and and it would just be, I just go, wow, make your mouth water if you're a calf roper. He just, every time. And he was just one of those good horses. Yeah. One of those great horses. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. What about Zan's Bueno Bar?
She was a nice little mare. She was I was fortunate enough to win the calf roping, the junior calf roping on her for Carol and Matlock. And they sent her over there to me. And when I was still at Clovis, and I started her, and she was a good little mare, just really a nice little mare. Probably not as in the caliber of the Reprise Bars and some of those like that, but just a good little mare. And she was always kind of saying, always on your team, so to speak, and pretty little brown mare. And when you rode in the arena, you had their attention, because she was cute and little pencil neck, and just a pretty mare. Yeah. And but really a nice little mare, but probably not of one of the superstars. But I mean, if I had her today, anybody'd love her. She's the goods. Yeah. She was a nice little mare. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to, and there was another Zan Parbar mare that I showed for him same time. It was another really nice mare too. I shouldn't even brought her up. Her name evades me right now. But anyway, I had several of those that was the first two they sent me, actually, in a bay mare. Gosh, I can't believe I can't call her name. But anyway, she was awesome mare. And, but the little mare, she was like a lot of those horses, some of the horses that you ride, she was a little bit of a thief. You know what I mean? When you rode in the ring, she may not have been a superstar, but she was just never did anything wrong, and and it always looked good. And that was her gig. Yeah, I loved her. She was a sweetheart. Yeah, good little mare. Yeah.
The judges wanted to plus her.
They wanted to be on your team when you rode in there, and that's that. Of course, that's that's what we're talking about. Is good horses, and that's what she was. She was a good one, and so consequently, they got their attention. She didn't ride in, looking around and doing, be dumb. She was doing business.
Yeah.
So that was a very huge part of her success. Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. What about Xanador?
He was a gorgeous horse. He was a really a big, pretty horse. Same kind of deal. He was a bigger horse, 15 hand, kind of a 15-1 maybe. Stock and legged, real rich, bright sorrel, pretty ball face. He was a good one. I was fortunate enough to get to Carol, and I was partners on him, and he was a good horse. He was a nice horse. We didn't show him a whole lot. We ended up selling him to Brazil, after we won the world on him and showed him some. But he was a really nice horse. Yeah, he was not as much of a butt drag as a reprise barn, some of them, but a nice horse. Yeah.
Do you remember how he was bred?
Yeah, he was by Zan Parbar out of gosh, I can't remember that mare, how she was, I want to say like a Skip a Star, maybe something that, I'm not sure. I can't remember, honestly.
Okay.
I can't, and I should know, but I can't, I don't recall. I can't remember what kind of mare she was out of. He was out of, yeah. Yeah, Carol and I went to Billy Allen. Actually started that horse. He had been riding him, and we went to Scott City and one day up there and to look at it. And the guy that wanted to sell him, and we went up there and we bought him. And Billy had started him, which he did Billy's another one of my quote mentors, so to speak. He was, I always, when I watched him go in the ring, I watched him every time because he'd put on, he did it right. So anyway, and that horse was nice. He had him started really, really well. And fortunately, like again, another good horse, and you got home and he was nice and he was pleasant to be around and just a good horse. Yeah. Really a nice horse. Yeah. Yeah. We was, and then had, end up winning the world on him and then, had quite a bit of success with him.
Right.
He was good. Yeah.
Oh.
He was a nice horse.
All right. Zan's Parson.
He was really, really a nice horse. He was out of a Jack bred mare, I believe. And he was by Zan Parbar. He was another one of those horses that just cool-minded, easy to be around. Sold him to Miss Barbara Cowan. Her breeding program was around that horse for a good minute. She bred a lot of mares to him and was ranch mare and raised some nice horses. But he was a good horse. He was easy and just a nice horse. Just really a nice horse to be around. And we did everything on him too, like we did most of them at that time. It wasn't quite so specialized at that moment.
Right. It wasn't back then.
No, it wasn't. Some of those horses we showed in the pleasure and, such as that, the first few times we had a little Zan Parbar mare that we years ago there, we was at the Colorado Springs and I'd never shown in the pleasure, literally, and Carol said, show that mare in the pleasure. And I said, oh, really? I didn't want to look dumb, which I probably did, but anyway, I ended up winning the class, but it was but she was just a little pretty moving, a little low-headed mare, and just loped around like, of course, it's changed. It's a totally different picture nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Totally different. So, but anyway, because she just loped along nice and soft and easy, and but that's the kind that, yeah. So it was that was one of the few times that I showed in the pleasure.
Do you remember her name?
Oh gosh, I cannot remember. She was out of a Jack mare. I'll never, and I can see her just like she's standing there, but I cannot remember her name. I'm embarrassed, but
it's been a while.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. I might not be able to tell you what I had for breakfast. So. But anyway, she was a good one. Yeah, I can remember literally riding in the arena on her. But because I was kind of going, oh man. But anyway, it was fun. Yeah. All
right, let me ask you another one. Amazon.
He was another one out of a Jack mare. Honestly, he was and he was bionic. That horse was too. He didn't have quite as much run as some of those others, like Reprise Bar and a few of those. But he had the same kind of temperament as Reprise Bar. In Zanzibar Bar and some of those. He was real flat neck, always like looking for his whatever he wanted him to do, and had a big stifle and a pretty horse, nice looking horse. And if you was going to draw a picture of in the dictionary for the Kef horse, what you want him to, you could put his picture in there. He'd be the one. You know what I mean? He was that kind. Departed. He was a nice horse. And every time you pulled your slack, he was on his tail. Every time. He was a good one. Yeah, that was really a nice horse. Yeah, I enjoyed showing him, and we showed him. Of course, showed him in everything. I showed him in the cow horse and head and heel in the calf roping, and we was at this a couple of years later. We were at the Sun Circuit out there, and they was giving a all around whatever it was. I don't know whether it was a saddle or a bridle or whatever trinket it was. Well, we were. But if they had an all around, I was all in. You know, for whatever reason, I don't know. I love those deals. But anyway, we she went to the. I said, go check and see. And we had Xanador at the same time, and I wanted Xanador. I needed him to win the all around for promotion, the stallion deal. You know, I say I needed it too. That's when I
sure.
So she goes to Carol goes. I said, go check and see it was on the day off. We had 3 shows and had 3 shows. You know, had a day off and 3 shows. Used to have a break or whatever. So anyway, she goes up there and she come back. She said, Amazon's winning all around. I said, really? I was going, dang. Of course, I was wanting, I was in good shape. Honestly, I thought I was in the lead on Xanador. And so we peeled around there. And so, of course, we realized so anyway, I ended up showing him in the trail, which is, I shouldn't have done that because he had to repair the trail course when I got done with the trail class. But anyway, it was, that was a lot of fun. He was a nice horse, really a good horse. Yeah. I had another horse about the same time. His name was Lucky Zanparbar, and we called him Radar. We'd bought him from a guy in Wichita, Kansas. And he was another one, just kind of like, I hate to keep repeating myself, but those horses were so much like that, that they were good-minded and they just, of course, had the presence about them. And anyway, we was at the show there one night, and of course, it was like probably 10, 11 o'clock at night. And we was all, during the roping, of course, it was all going on. And had we just lined those horses up along the fence, and I just rope on one and go get on another one. And Carol was holding them. She was standing in front of them there. And I just had the reins hooked over the saddle horn, and literally, I mean, that's, they just stand there. And I rode over there, and Radar I was fixed to get on him, and I said, so where's Radar? She said, looked around and she said, I don't know. And the gate was just like from here to that door. And he was on the end, and he just walked off and walked out at the gate and walked down the shed, walked down the end of the arena and out there and went over to his stall and was back in his stall. I said, but when it seemed like he was gone, of course, I wasn't panic because it was, I figured he was out grazing, is what I figured. Right. So I just, whatever horse I was on, I just tried it out and went over to the stalls, and he had gone back in his stall. It was standing there trying to eat because he couldn't because the reins were on the saddle horn. But anyway, I got him, let him back over because I give Carol a hard time about, man, what kind of oversight you can't be doing. I was giving her a hard time anyway. But it was those shows were a lot of fun. They really were. Of course, we'd start at 8 o'clock in the morning with whatever class, and like a lot of times we wouldn't get done until midnight. And they were long, and we showed in all the classes, and of course the roping was a lot of times either first or last. Typically,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And but anyway, that was kind of but that horse was another horse. He was kind of like Amazon and some of those horses, just a good one, just a really nice horse. And we later on, Carol gave him to Clay, and he showed him in the youth. He was a good horse, just a good horse.
Clay's your son.
Clay's my son. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, there were several of those like that you just And then it kind of went on down, then a little bit later on, there was, we got into some of the Diamond Sparkle, some of her lines,
right.
And that was after she had, and Sparkle's Rosanna and some of those. And gosh, that was the same kind of deal. You just got to go, wow. In hindsight, at the time, you're going very blessed to be riding them, but like she was like one of those kind that you just go, superstar, Of course, when the reining, Maturity and all the stuff before we ever started, then Carol was reserve champion on her in the reining then one time, and she was a world champion in the whatever. I can't remember whether it was heading or the heeling. Rope Kez on her, did all that. There was like 3 or 4 of those mares that were great out of that mare. Yeah. And Rosanna and Susanna, Jetta. It was unbelievable. Yeah, all that whole line. Yeah. And then not to mention the stud. Yeah, he just, Lance Diamond. God, I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, he was bionic too. Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Bobby.
Huh?
What was it? So you mentioned early when you were talking about sort of how you got started that Sonny Jim Orr was showing Diamond Sparkle at the Land of Enchantment Circuit. You saw that mare showing. What was it like? And then she was also the 1979 Super Horse, so obviously fantastic mare. What was it like to see her, as you were getting started, and then get to ride, some of her progeny? And what was that like? Did you see some of those same traits from her to them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Of course, she was another one, and I maybe overusing the word, but she herself too was absolutely bionic. I mean, she was a superstar. I mean, at the time, of course, she'd already, Sonny Jim had one little, stuff on her before. And I wasn't that much aware of how much he had one on her until I seen her there. And then I kind of asked more about her, because she was gorgeous Palomino mare. And and she did everything like of course, he was just team roping on her there. No, I take that back. He showed her in the reining there too. And, I don't know, she won, I think, maybe even won the reining on her, maybe won the world on her in the reining too. I believe maybe, don't hold me to that, but I almost think he did. But anyway, she was a absolute superstar. Yeah, she was great. And, of course, Carol, she's, needless to say, was premier horse person, and she, knew about her, heard about her, seen her, whatever. And she, she went and purchased her. And then right after that, she purchased, Roseanne. She had, sure, I can't remember that gentleman's name. I apologize. I can't even call her his name. But anyway, it was she was, that was a, and of course, as you're riding them, and you kind of, you think, I can definitely feel the same traits, but that mare, all her colts, I don't think she ever had a bad one. I think every one of her colts was been the opportunity. They were good ones. I mean, every stinking one of them, they were, some of them were better than others, needless to say, because they had a little better mind or whatever, but they were all great horses. Yeah. Yeah. From right on down the line, Shining Spark, you should,
Yeah.
The list is exactly this long on so on small type. Yeah.
Right.
Every one of them she had was a good one. And it was just, again, just very blessed to have the opportunity to be, and then of course, her, the Zan Parbars were, it was a great cross for her, needless to say. And then Genuine Doc, come right behind, Blam was just as good, they were great too. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Everything we've talked about this morning so far is by Zan Barbar.
A lot of them have, a bunch of them have. Of course, like we were saying earlier, that's just, I was just fortunate enough to get to ride those, and even, and show them, and so it's been, and it's been, it's like Zan's Diamond's son, another, that was the stallion that, full brother to all those good mares.
Right.
He literally, and I didn't get to show him as much, because he got injured and they lost him. But if that horse if he hadn't died an early, he would have made a huge impact on the industry. I mean, huge, because he had like one crop of colts, two crops of colts or whatever. And I mean, like at the reining futurity, I think there was, and I don't want to exaggerate, but I think there was 4 in the finals of his first crop of colts at the reining futurity. So that's the kind of horse he was. I'm kind of sorry he was going to be. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he was without a doubt one of those nicest horses that I've ever ridden. Of course, they showed him in the reining. I think Craig won the Derby on him, I think, in the reining, and I started showing him in the other stuff, in the ropings and stuff. But that horse was just he was absolutely unbelievable. And like, it goes right back to just like what he's talking about, that, Diamond Sparkle. That's, but he was without a doubt one of the best horses, that I've been fortunate enough to ride. Yeah. Yeah. He was a good one. Yeah. That whole line, and then, so it's, you get to, it's kind of crazy how strong those good mares,
Yeah.
We talk about what you want to. And of course, she herself was a superstar. But then what the true deal is when they start having pups and all of them are good, then you go, yeah, she's, yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you another one. Zan's Misty Skip.
He was a good horse. He was another really nice horse. He was a Skipper W bred horse on the bottom side, but a nice horse. He, I don't know, I won the world a couple of 3 times on him. I think he had in Healing, maybe I don't know, fortunate enough to win a couple of deals on him, 3 or maybe 4, I don't know, several. But he was a good horse. And then we sold him, and he was. They won the amateur Careful Open 3 or 4 times, I think.
Yeah.
He was that kind of horse. He was like kind of you and I'd like to ride. He was like 14-2 and a box car behind, a pretty neck, like you can imagine how he would look being bred like he was.
Right.
Pretty head. He was a little ideal looking calf horse. Yeah. But he was really, really a good heel horse, really a nice head horse. And longevity was awesome. I mean, he went right on, and they rode him forever, and he won all the time. Yeah, he was a good horse. Yeah.
Now, all of these that we've talked about so far, they were all Carroll's.
Most all of them that so far we have talked about. Yeah, most of them. That was when we first on. Besides the ones prior, when we first started. Yes, sir. Yeah, they were Carroll's. Yeah,
okay.
She had sold. She had raised them all. Excuse me. She had sold like. That horse, Misty Skip, she had sold him to Paris Wixon, and that's
okay.
Yeah, that we showed.
Okay,
we showed, but we kept him there in the barn and showed him for several years. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, Par Skip Bar,
same kind of a deal. He was just a good horse. That horse was easy to be around. Really, really a good horse. He really was. He was not like a Dan, like maybe Zan's son, that bionic deal, but it's just a good horse. Yeah. Just an outstanding horse. Anybody could ride him. Just kind of one of those kind that was user friendly and always on your team. Yeah.
So he was, you're looking here, he was a full brother to Misty Skip.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's right. I forgot. That's right. Yeah, he was. Yep. And he wasn't twisted quite as tight, so to speak, as Misty Skip. He was a little different disposition wise. You know what I mean? He was like one of those kind that just like, we'd love to ride him today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just lead him out, saddle him, lope him off, and he was put him up, and back in the box, and he was all business. One of those, just a good horse. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And everything he did on him, he was the same way. Like Misty Skip, I never did show him in the cow horse much, and I didn't do a lot of the other stuff on him because he was just a little bit wired, so to speak.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But he was. They were good, just good all around, great horses. Yeah, to do whatever you wanted to do on them. Yeah, especially the roping. Yeah.
All right, Biarritz Bar.
Ritz Bar. He was a full brother to Reprise Bar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he wasn't as fancy and as awesome as Reprise Bar, needless to say, but he had another brother, Sam's Bear was his name, and poor Bear, a full brother to both of them, to Reprise Bar. And he was kind of in between them. Ritz Bar, he was a really a nice horse, really a good horse, but wasn't quite as bionic as, twisted as tight, so to speak, as Reprise Bar. So, but just a nice horse, just a good horse. Yeah, he was a good horse to be around too, and just do whatever you wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah, but he was a good horse. Yeah. But there was he wasn't quite as as far as being superstars. He was just a good horse. Yeah,
right.
Just a dang good one. Yeah.
Okay,
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to win some stuff on him because he was easy, Yeah.
All right, let me ask you about another one. Zan's Last Light.
He was a real pretty horse. I mean, he had some halter points, and he was a real pretty horse, like a real pretty long, thin neck, pretty headed horse. And he also was really a nice horse. Didn't have as much, and had plenty, had way more than the average horse stopping wise and such. But he didn't have the big, just tear the ground up like 3 or 4 of those others we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, but really a nice horse. A lot of ring presence and had a lot of nice colts too, and some good colts. I mean, they rode good and he was a a little more on the elegant looking, side, than some of the others, But he was a really a nice horse, or a good horse too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I enjoyed. He was a lot of fun to ride. Always real supple and real soft. He was a nice horse. Yeah.
Okay. 7S Xanaday.
Xanaday. Yeah, that he belonged to Terry Force and them, and he was a good horse. That was and he went on to be a really nice sire and kind of one of their backbones of their breeding program for years, and brown horse, and he was a good horse. That horse was unlike the others. I mean, like the others, was real easy to be around. He had a lot of stop himself. He was just a nice horse. Yeah, he was. One that you would enjoy riding every day. He's one of those kind that you drug him out of the stall and you would look forward to riding him. Yeah, and he was a show horse too. He had a lot of presence about him, pretty mover, all that. Had all the parts. He was a good horse. Yeah.
Did you show him for Stewart's?
Yes, we did. Yeah. We after they got him started, they sent him to me and I roped on him and showed him for a good minute. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they took him home. They bred a lot of mares to him, and like I say, he was kind of one of their backbone. Some of their good, and I think she's kept good many mares by him, for her broodmare program. So,
right,
and she's got a really good program there.
Yeah,
Miss Terry does. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. The next one on the list, we've kind of already talked about Sparkle Susanna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was her and Rosanna. They were both of those mares they were just unbelievably good. I mean, she was Rosanna, the Palomino mare. She was the older mare. She was a little more laid back than Susanna. Susanna was like all in everything she did. You know what I mean? Rosanna, she was take a little better care of herself, so to speak. Would be a little, but Susanna, she was good. I mean, and gorgeous, a gorgeous mare. Little pencil neck and tighten the throat latch and just a big old hip and just a gorgeous mare. Yeah. When she was one of those kind, when you let her out of the stall, you were going, wow, that's a pretty horse. Every time you caught her, you couldn't, if you like a good horse, you like leading her out of the stall, because she was just one of those kind. And, but she was a lot of fun to show too, because she was the same, like I keep repeating myself, but she had the presence about her, and like if you liked a good horse, if you liked a pretty horse, well, you were on her team, and she did everything good too. She's a huge stopper and real quick, real fast footed, and but she was a good one, really a nice mare. Like I say, comparing the two. Roseanne she was a little more, she hardly ever made a mistake. Rosanna, she was always just like right between your reins and just easy going. And, if you picked up, she was dragging it. And if you went right or left, whatever, she was, all. And Susanna, she was a little more wired, just a little tighter. You know what I mean? Just like, when you kind of had to maybe just kind of coast around a little bit more on her, you know what I mean? And they end up, I think they won a lot of the reining on her and everything, but I think that was a little bit of her. Maybe she wasn't quite as much of a superstar in the reining as Roseanne, just because Roseanne just like cruised all the time and just, whatever you wanted to do, she was, and if you mashed the gas, well, she was, here we go,
Did you show her and everything too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, showed her and everything. Yeah, showed her and everything. Yeah. Yeah. Not as much as I did Roseanne, because of the
right.
She was mentally, she wasn't as cool, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah. But she was easy, and when I did show her and all the roping, you could win first. If you did your job and you drew a decent cow, you could win first. That was the beauty part of so many of those horses we talked about. If you just had some luck, and did your job and got them shown and had a decent enough cow or enough cow, you could you could win first. That's what I loved about them. I guess that's why we're talking about good horses. But,
yeah.
But that was a kind. Yeah. Those were really good. Fortunately, that's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Bobby, do you, so I think almost all the ones we've talked about so far have been by Zanpar Bar, and we've talked about, they've been out of great mares, which is, you mentioned how important that is. But do you think were there any consistent traits that you felt like came from him? Were they all, did he make them all really athletic or cowy, or was there anything that you felt like was really consistent from the fact that they were all from Zanpar Bar? Or by Zanpar Bar?
Well, obviously, I guess there's several different mares.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot of them had the exact same positive, good traits.
Yeah.
So, you'd have to attribute a lot of that to him. Of course, a lot of it was the pretty movers and the good looks and all that stuff is so important, in a quote show horse and any good horse. I mean, we've all, guys that have ridden a lot, we've had a couple of homely children that was really good horses, but they maybe not, they probably wouldn't have been quite as successful in the show pen. You know what I mean? It may have been just as good in a lot of other things, but that gorgeous look and those horses, they had that look. A lot of them, I know I mentioned the pretty necks and pretty heads. And of course, the first time I seen Zanpar Bar in person is at the World Show, and they led him out, and I was like literally, and I'd seen a lot of horses. I mean, I wasn't, I'd been around a little bit, and they led him out, and I went, holy moly. And I'm not even exaggerating. I was blown away the first time I seen him, and this was way before any of this transpired, but he was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, everything about him was, I'm talking, like picture of him right there, and that's, what I mean? Yeah, he is gorgeous. So definitely he had a lot to do with obviously the whole line, for sure. But it's of course the mare end is so important, but obviously he's had a lot of great horses out of all different kind of mares. Yeah. I know we've kind of kicked around here and ended up, of course, some of the superstars we've talked about on these. Of course, we could get down to the ones that maybe that I didn't win a world on, or that I was, just one here or there that was maybe dang near as good, and maybe as good or better, I'm not saying, but, it's out of different ones, and out of different mares and, different whatever. But it's, but man, that lineage, that pedigree that's where it's at.
Are there any that, kind of mentioning off that kind of stand out that maybe weren't the world champions, but maybe really helped you in your riding or whatever, that maybe they weren't up here, but they were just below and were just the really great horses?
Well, the list is so, it's for me, I've been so fortunate. Jim, I was talking about it earlier. I've been so fortunate to ride so many great horses. I mean, literally superstars. I mean, from literally from childhood to date, and there's been a lot of them. Of course, so many of them we haven't mentioned that, some of them that I've raised and some of them that I've had the good fortune of riding. Look at her glow, for instance. That mare. I mean, she was, as good as any of these we've talked about. You know what I mean? In reality, just a matter of getting her shown. She was the same kind of horse as the Sparkles Roseanne, the Sparkles Suzanne, the same kind of horse, a great horse. You know what I'm saying? And so, and then Dual Spark, for instance, he was just like keep using the word, but bionic. I mean, could run so fast he'd make your eyes water, and, could turn, do the whole, just a superstar, and crawl around right in front of a cow, just like, like the wins first at the cutting futurity, you know what I mean? And then back in the box and go blast across there and, and do it. And he would, so, there's so many of them, and, we haven't even, the list is
long.
Yeah, the list is long, fortunately, and I've been so fortunate. Yeah, just like Look at Her Glow, for instance, we're talking about the good brood mare lines.
Yeah.
She was, we raised her, and she was by a horse called CDO Cody that I raised him. And he was out of a hickory mare that I'd won about 150,000 and, by CDO Lena. And anyway, I raised Look at Her Glow, and from her 2-year-old year, she was one of those kind. You were just, like Clay. Now, at that time, I was over here at Gainesville a lot, and Clay was taking care of the mares and colts and stuff at home. And he told me I had a boy working for me there, and he said, when she was a 2-year-old, he said, Dad, you need to get this bay filly, start riding her yourself. Said she's a superstar. He told me that when she was a 2-year-old. So, and then I said, really? He said, yeah, she's as good. And so blah, blah, blah. Then she went on to be a world champion, and then she's produced maybe 8 world champions or some such matter, So, it's the list is long, Lay Down Sally and, Dual Patron, J-Lo's Glow, Time to Glow. I don't think he's won the world yet, but he's won 100, 200,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And 2 world reserves or whatever. Anyway, and she's, but she's, one of those kind that, just the absolute. And she was the same way. I did a little interview on her. I was talking about her. They wanted to do a little article on her or whatever. And she would be literally heading, heeling, or the calf roping. You could have ridden her at the national finals, literally in any one of the events. She was that good in all 3 of them. She was one of those kind, She was kind of like the Zams Diamond Sun reprise bar, that caliber, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
As far as rope horses go, yeah. And I showed her in the cow horse. I showed her in the World's Greatest Horseman 2 or 3 times, and made the finals on her a couple, 3 times. Wasn't fortunate enough to get, in top 2 or 3 on her, but it was no fault of hers. Usually, it was most likely my inability. But yeah, she was the goods. But it's kind of funny how those mares, those really good mares like that, she hardly hasn't had a bad one. They've been a lot of good ones. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And I'm not going to compare her to Diamond Sparkle, but necessarily. But she's the same kind of, same kind of line, same kind of deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But she herself was a great one. Diamond Sparkle was a great one,
Mm-hmm.
and consequently, a lot of her pups are great too.
Yeah.
And bred to a lot of different horses too. I bred her. I bred her to a good many different horses, and of course, I bred her to Dual Spark. A couple of times. That was kind of that's when most of them that's done really, really good has been by Dual Spark. Yeah. So it's been, yeah. Of course, he was by Dual Pep and out of a daughter Docalina. So it wasn't an accident. He was a good one.
Yeah.
It's that some of that old solid bloodlines, all the way back. So, but it's, and he was he was one of those kind that you just, when he was a colt, I showed him at the snaffle bit futurity when he was a 3, but when he was 2, he would like nose on the ground, work a cow like a docked purr, like a cutter, like a one that you'd want to show at the cutting futurity. That was his gig. And then you could just pick him up and go blast down the fence, and he'd just get it, And, I had Robert Smith, a good friend of mine, he worked for me at the time. He told me one day, he said, Coach, I don't know what else to do. He was riding, and he was a long 2-year-old, early 3-year-old. And he said, I don't even know what to do this horse. He said, he's doing all he needs to be doing. He said, he don't need to be doing any better than he's doing. And I said, just keep on keeping on, And of course I was riding him along, and he was a good one. So yeah. And it just kind of like some of those others we've talked about, whatever you got ready to do it. Well, he had plenty of gas to do it. So anyway, and, I didn't have any luck on him at the snaffle bit futurity. Totally not his fault either, I might add. Anyway, but his colts, they've done well in all of it. And, yeah. So, but those, he's been he's up close to the top of some of the best ones that I've been fortunate enough to ride. Yeah. He fits right in with the Zan Parbar line that I've started out, if he started out on, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. He's a great one. And, but it's that horse called Hollywood Heat. Probably don't know whether I don't think he's even any of this stuff either, but he was also out of Docalina mare. Anyway, that horse was the same kind of a deal. He was a great horse too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a good one. Maybe not as bionic as a couple of those others, but had a lot of presence about him, big long mane, and same kind of every time, just like you'd suspect he would. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then another mare that I'd like to mention it. I raised the mare called Frecklina. She was my Freckles Playboy out of a daughter of Docalina, and then I bred her to Shining Spark and got Doolittle-Lena. And Doolittle-Lena's the mare and I didn't get to show Doolittle-Lena. She hurt her knee when she was a colt, and I didn't get to show her. But that's the mare that's Dual Spark's mother, and all those her colts have won about 800,000.
Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, and out of that Frecklina mare, and I won the Derby, the non-pro Derby, and the cutting on her when she was 4-year-old. Yeah. She was she was one of those kind too, like we're talking about. Like every time you got on her, every time you let her out of the stall, you wanted to pet her on the neck, Yeah. It's a good one.
All right, so you showed her in the cutting. Did you rope on her as well?
No, I didn't rope on Frecklina, no. Okay. No, I just showed her in the cutting, and then I started breeding her. And then, and she, I lost her. She didn't have a lot of colts. She colicked on me, and I lost her when I didn't get very many colts out of Frecklina. Yeah, but I was fortunate enough to get 2 or 3 of those really good ones.
Yeah.
And like Doolittle-Lena, that was the main one. And that mare would have been. She was really, really athletic, and she looked the part too. She looked just like kind of like you'd want to draw the picture of one. Yeah, buckskin mare, neck long as a well rope, and her colts are all the same. Look the same too. I mean, that's one of her traits. All of them are good front end and long thin necks, and and consequently they can do all the tricks, so to speak. Do all the stuff. But yeah, she was a really, really a good one for sure. Brood mare wise, I didn't have the opportunity to ride her, but
right.
Yeah, but she would have. There's no doubt she would have been a player. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What about Genuine Redbud?
That was really a good mare. That was really a good mare. She's fortunate enough to win the Super Horse on her that one year, and she was a Genuine Doc, and gorgeous mare, like big mare, like 15 hands and a huge hip and just a gorgeous mare. Yeah, that was really, really a nice mare. We did everything on her, obviously more the roping than any of the cow horse and stuff, but she was really a nice mare. I don't know. She got a lot of points. I bet I don't tell them how many points she ended up with in the end, because they showed her a lot after, we won the Super Horse on and all the stuff, but she was a good mare. Really a good mare. Yeah. Yeah. Terry had her at the time, and she was a great mare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great mare. Yeah. And ended up having a lot of good colts too. Yeah. Yeah. Just like you would suspect. Yeah. But she was also easy. She was real easy to be around. Actually, that I was showing her in the cow horse at the World Show. That one year, that's when she's one that fell with me and rolled over the top of me and messed my shoulder up. Yeah, yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, no fault of hers either. It was and I'm not throwing blame out there or anything, but they used to just drag the arena. They drag it down around the outside, 2 trips around the outside, and here we go. And they wasn't quite as, didn't have the fancy Kaiser deal.
Right.
And there was a ridge. Kind of, kind of along there, and I came off the fence with the cow, and I just asked her to go, and the timing was, whether it's mine or her, whatever. Anyway, the timing, and it just right there on that, hit that deal, and I was showing her in a hackamore, and she hit that deal, and she stumbled, and her head went down, and I couldn't pick her head up. I couldn't get her head lifted back up to keep her, get her back up, and she just went down and just rolled over the top of me, and like literally over the top of me, and that's when I messed my shoulder up. Anyway, she was a great mare. No fault of hers whatsoever. But that was the one I was riding when I had the little accident. But she was stopping Jane too. Yeah, she was a good one. Yeah, really a nice mare. Yeah.
Well, let's see. We talked about Look at Her Glow. Joker Pepsan.
Yeah, he was a good horse. I didn't show him a whole lot. We showed him and we, one was fortunate enough to win the world on him, and we sold him And they some amateur gentleman got him and showed him quite a good little bit, and got along really, really good. He was a good horse, really a nice horse. He was out of a Pepe San Mara, I believe, and Bazan Parbar. He was a good horse, yeah, for sure. He was maybe not one of the upper 3 or 4 of them, but he was a nice horse, really a nice horse. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Another dual spark is CSR Dual Glow.
Yeah, he was a nice horse. I won the world on him in the heading. Showed him in the ranch riding and a bunch of that kind of stuff for a good minute, and got along really good. He has some nice colts too. He was a nice horse. He was a nice horse. Yeah, for sure. He was real easy to be around, and maybe wasn't. Maybe not quite as a Bionic stopper, maybe as like Patron, or maybe a couple of those, but always on your side and just a good horse. Yeah. Always a pretty mover, and really had some nice colts. They've shown a lot of them, and they've done really, really well. Yeah. Yeah. He was a good horse. Yeah.
All right. I got another one here. Owns Time to Glow.
Time to Glow.
Yeah. Time to Glow. Yeah,
yeah, he's really a nice horse. He's another one of Look at Her Glows. That's one of the last ones. Yeah, that's a Hickory Holly Time. He's a good horse. Yeah, he's more reserve in the head, no reserve in the calf opening. Was I don't know, won a bunch of stuff when he was but he was easy to be around. It's cold black. Didn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
And, but he was just typical of Look at Her Glows colts. He's, just a good horse to do it all and sound. And, and I haven't even, but like a lot of those horses, like that line, and like, I don't know that, like, Look at Her Glow. I don't know that all those years she had 1,000 points or whatever. And, it takes a lot of showing in the hauling to do that. You know what I mean? And I don't know that I ever even injected that mare. I don't think she ever had any issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way some of those others, they're just, quote, hard knockers. You know what I mean? Just good. Of course, a lot of that goes from conformation, and there's put together right. And so consequently they could, durable and just nice horses to go do business on. And like her, I never did anything to her. And that's typical of a lot of her colts, you didn't have to haul them to the vet every time you come back from a show, you know what I mean? But that's all just good ones. In that time to Glow, same way. He's just a good horse. And I don't know, he's won over 200,000, I guess now, in the ropings and such. And so obviously he's a nice one for sure. But he was starting him and everything. He was easy the whole time. Well, after I got him started, he was pretty tough when he was when he was a colt. We was catching him, and he wasn't wanting no part of that. Of course, I think there's 10 or 12 of those stud colts that year, and all of them was running together, and he was kind of the kingpin, and he didn't want to be messed with for a minute but after I got our hands on him, he was good. I raised him a lot of them pretty ranchy, so to speak. They didn't have a lot of, might have had their feet trimmed a couple of times, but that's about it. Anyway, but excuse me, but he's been good the whole time. I mean, just easy, never any trouble, and and then just typical of her colts. Look at Her Glows colts, yeah. But he is definitely a good one.
We talked about, a lot of horses this morning, and I didn't mention a while ago the fact that you've earned over 30,000 AQHA points. So,
yeah, that's looking back, you go, holy moly! Of course, I don't know I don't know who's I don't know who has more. JD might have more. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but it's. That's a lot of shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. And excuse me. And of course, it changed, several years ago, but, it used to be 6 points for first is what you got. Now they add up a lot faster at 9 points at a time. They do it 6 points at a time,
right.
So, anyway, it was, gosh, you look back and you think about, man, where's, it's hard to believe, honestly,
Yeah.
you know. And then I was just looking at some of the lists and stuff, and about, you know, shows you'd been to, and, you know, and all. And of course, it was just kind of the same way after I got started showing. It was kind of the same way I felt when I was rodeoing. I didn't think they could have one without me, just about, you know. So I tried to beat everyone we could go to, you know. And of course, fortunately, you know, at the time, you know, with Carol, that was, you know, she was, you know, she wanted to promote them horses, and, you know, that was the name of the game.
Yeah.
So we went to a lot of shows. We showed in a lot of different classes, and had a lot of good horses to show, and was fortunate enough to, you know, to win a little bit along the way. And but that's you know, you start trying to think about where you got that many points, and you're going, my goodness, it's crazy, you know. But anyway, yeah, I was very, very.
A lot of shows and a lot of horses.
A lot of shows, a lot of good horses. What I'm talking about, you got a lot of good ones. It's been tough forever. You know what I mean? It's all. I guess it's gotten tougher because it's more specialized now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's gotten tougher. Maybe it hasn't. I don't know. Because it was tough enough when you just, you know, you stop and think about the guys that were competing, you know, back, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever. They were tough then too. Those guys, you know, there just wasn't quite as many of them that were really good. Now you drive up and, like, I mean, they'll be, I mean, at the roping, they might, you know, half a dozen guys been to the national finals. And not to say that, you know, but I'm just saying the rope good. You know what I mean? I mean, rope really good. And then there'll be, you know, a lot of other guys that rope almost as good that you never even heard of,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, yeah.
And
right.
because they're just, you know, it's evolved to that point, you know, which is awesome. It's good for the industry, you know, good for, you know, but it's, yeah, I love it. It's great, very competitive.
You know, you mentioned the guys from the national finals, and then you go to World Show, and there are some, you know, PRCA world champions they're showing and all, but the thing that I've noticed about it is that those guys have learned how to show their horses.
A lot of them absolutely have.
You know, they're not this roping and ducking.
Nope, exactly. It's evolved to the point now where they I mean, as good hands as they are, and horsemen as a lot of them are, and you know, some obviously step above the group, but it's it's nowadays it's hard to get around them. Yeah, it really is, because it's as well as it should be. You know, that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, and it's whether it be the roping or the cow horse or the cutting or whatever it is. I mean, there's, you know, the people have, you know, there's so many good young hands anymore, because they've, you know, had a lot of help, the mentor, so to speak, that showed them the stuff, and that's, you know, it's hard to, which is great for the industry, you know, and that's the way it should be. But you know, a lot of those guys, you know, it used to be, you know, you'd go to one and you know, you could, you know, same guys, you know, be showing, you know, I'd show in the cutting and the reining and the cow horse and the head and the heel and the calf roping, and, you know, and then sometimes the other stuff just because of the all around stuff. But you know, nowadays you don't see that at all anymore. You know, you have your cutters, you have your calf ropers. Basically, you have your headers and heelers. There's not even anymore a big percent of the guys, even in the roping events, there's not very many guys that show in the calf roping, heading, and heeling. Most of them just show either in the team roping or the calf roping. The big percent of them anymore, you know. Yeah. And of course, you know, used to in the day you know, of course, you know, show head and heel and rope calves on the same horse in the same day. A lot of, you know, that was the norm for me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And then if they had a cow horse, we'd show them in the cow horse. You know. But anyway, that was back to, fortunately, is the had nice horses, had good horses to ride. You know, that's the only way you can do it and be competitive. Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's awesome. Yeah. The whole thing is evolved. Of course, everything's so specialized anymore, you know.
It is.
And it's gotten to where, you know, but anywhere you pull up now, you better have your knife sharp if you're going to win something. I know that.
Yeah.
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 It'd be riding a good one. Yeah.
Well, have we missed any of them, Bobby, that you want to talk about?
Oh my goodness!
I mean,
I know there's been so many. Like I say,
Oh,
there's a couple of those little things that I've, you know, over the years that I've had that, you know, that, I mean, I could even go back to back to when I was a kid, like some of those that, like I mentioned that little mare and some of those that we'd raised, and, they was very instrumental in, in my, success as far as being able in, competitive and stuff. And, like, little, the horse that I hauled forever in college, and even after that, like rope calves on and whatever. And, some of those that we raised out of that same line that, my dad had, and, it's, little horse called Chapel. I don't, he's one of my first horses, but anyway, I still ride him when I went to college, rope calves on him. And then anyway, there's so many of them. I've been so blessed, that, and the little mare I mentioned to you a while ago, Hickory's Little Girl, the cutting mare,
Yeah.
Some of those, it's, they've, she's been very instrumental in a lot of my, whatever success in the breeding program, so to speak, because her colts have been done so well, and, she won like 150,000 or some such a matter. And she was a superstar, so to speak, just a cutting mare, you know. Then her colts, of course, they've done everything. That's grandmother of Look at Her Glow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. So all that's kind of, it's all kind of bloodlines as they trickle down, Yeah. Yeah. So, because that was a C.D.O. Cody. That was her mother. That was his dam. So anyway, and there's been some of those that, I've had that's, along the way that maybe, of course, that mare had quite a bit of notoriety. I said hadn't much notoriety, but she's had quite a bit because she's, that one, she did well. Yeah. And then like the little mare, Miss Warchips, the mare I was mentioning a while ago,
Right.
Real Gun's mother and mother of Hickory's Little Girl and all those, you kind of, some of those, of course, I didn't ride those, but just kind of some of them that had a lot to do with my breeding program, so to speak, which has been, the horses that I've ridden, out of them, or out of that lineage, it's been awesome.
Well, Real Gun's another one that we didn't talk about, that you raised and started and showed and all, and then sold him, and he went on to become a super horse.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. He was really that was a good horse too. Needless to say, and excuse me, I bred that little mare to play gun and got him, and Miss Warchip's little mare that she's his mother of the Hickory's Little Girl and a lot of those. But anyway, I raised him and showed him. I think he was maybe the, I don't know, honor roll junior cutting horse when he was a 4-year-old, and I showed him in one of the cow horse futurities when he was 3, and then Terry Force was looking for another stallion, and she come and looked at him and bought him, and they did really, really well with him. They, got him promoted well and showed him good, and that was a good horse too. He really was. And had a lot of nice colts. I think she's still got a lot of mares by that horse.
Yeah.
That she kept. And, but that was really a good horse. Yeah. He was right amongst the, as far as just doing everything on, I gotta love him. Yeah. Had a lot of speed too. Just a lot like Dual Spark. And there's a few of those horses along the way that you ride that I've been fortunate enough to ride that just had that extra gear, that you just can't, some of them don't have it, and some of those great ones do, But yeah, he was one that had a lot of speed and a lot of turn, a lot of stop. He's a good horse. Yeah, yeah. And there's so many of them. We'll just looking down the list, you go, well, yeah, I don't mention, didn't even think about that one. And you go, oh man, I can't believe I didn't, think about him, because I've been so lucky, over the years to ride, be fortunate enough to, get to swing my leg over some of those like I have, and, thanks to the likes of Carol and a lot of the other owners, and thanks to my being lucky raising some, so yeah, it's been great.
Well, you were talking about, lucky to have those good horses and all, but it wasn't all the horses, Bobby. I mean, there had to be some talent there too.
Well, we was fortunate enough to get by some of them. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was very, very, very lucky. Yeah, it's but it's you gotta be riding a good one. You have forever too. Just like I mentioned earlier, it's been that way the guy on the best horse, he may not be the best hand, but if he's got the best horse, he's a contender.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I've been, like I say, been fortunate enough to ride some of those. It's in that category, you know, just a dang good horse, you know, and let you go do your business, you know, whether it be in the calf roping, the cutting, or pinning the cows, to whatever, brand them, you know what I mean? He's just a good horse. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we talked about good horses. So, sorry. This kind of goes along with our theme. How do you define a good horse? It's a loaded question, Bobby.
well, somewhat is, but you know, it's like, you know, there's so many things, you know, of course, the first thing is their willingness to do what you want to do. You know what I mean? You got to have a good-minded horse, and for whatever you're going to do, you know, whether it be, and it doesn't matter the discipline. If a bucking horse to a racehorse to a cutting horse, doesn't matter. They're bred to do a job, and if they're good-minded and they're willing to do that job, and then it just gets them to be how athletic they are, and all that kind of stuff. But it's there's such a thin line on just a horse and a good one. You know what I mean? There's a lot of horses that falls into the category of a good horse that they just, like, some of them, like I mentioned, maybe they think better than some of the others that maybe didn't do well. It might have had more talent, but they didn't have a good enough mind to be a good horse. You know what I'm saying? And so, and it, you know, and the athleticism, the stop, the run, the whatever, you know, it all falls into place as far as being a good horse, as far as all the disciplines that I do, you know. Of course, you know, it's your race horses, for instance, they're, you know, obviously the one that can run the fastest, but he has to think good, has to be a good enough minded horse to be good in the gates, do all the business like you want to do. It all goes hand in hand. You know what I mean? That's the ones that to be a contender at the end of the day. You know, the one that doesn't want to think good. A lot of times they're not going to let you win, because they're going to do something to beat you or do something to keep you from winning. Right.
Yeah. Whether
it be roping, cutting, cow horse, racehorse, whatever. But those good ones, there's got to be so many of them now. There's lots of really, really nice horses, because the breeding programs they've accelerated, and there's been so many people that, you know, breeding specifically for whatever line you're after, you know. And man, it's awesome nowadays. If you're whatever discipline you're interested in, just, you know, you can get in line, and there's a lot of good horses out there. But a good one is I like them pretty, and I like a big hip, and I like a pretty neck. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Good horses.
Yeah, good horses. Yeah. Racetrack and the whole deal. Yeah.
Bobby, thanks.
You betcha. My pleasure. Absolutely.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for sure.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about the horses we discussed in this episode, visit AQHA.com/goodhorses. There you can explore the pedigrees, performance achievements, breeding history, and much more. It's the perfect place to dig deeper and stay connected with the American Quarter Horse. Don't forget to subscribe for updates and follow AQHA on social media.